Good evening, my name is Clara Juice and I welcome you to today's hybrid workshop organized by the S&D group within the European Parliament about how to design artificial intelligence for all. This is a particularly timely discussion because the European Parliament will soon enter the final stages of negotiations of its position on a regulation for artificial intelligence in the EU. A piece of legislation proposed last year by the European Commission and the S&D Group, it has a number of priorities that it wants to see included in the final text. The aim of today's discussion is therefore to listen to the perspectives of all experts and participants on different issues being touched upon, in order to help the social democratic family in the European House of Democracy to better shape its position and key priorities, making sure that civil society at large and on a local level as well get to have their say in this process. So today's event is being transmitted live simultaneously with 4 workshops taking place in 4 countries. We have one here happening in Malta, and I thank everyone for joining us here this evening. We also have another one happening in Italy. Ciao Italia, benvenuti.
Ciao.
Ciao. We have another one happening in Denmark. I allowed myself to learn, and I hope I say this right. It's go aften Denmark. Did I say it right?
Yeah, go aften.
Go aften. Hola, España. Our last country is Spain, joining us as well. Hello, Spain. Hola. So we, of course, have a lot of people watching us this evening from all European countries. So we welcome you all and thank you for joining us. In each country, we are going to be having a 1-hour workshop. And these workshops are going to be happening in local languages. As an audience, you have all had the opportunity to already select which workshop you would like to join. But allow me to introduce the topics of each workshop by introducing now our 4 MEPs, all participating in the workshop, 1 in each country. I would like to introduce Alex Ajus-Saliba, who is, of course, the Vice President of the S&D Group responsible for digital policy. Alex, you are here with us this evening, and Malta will actually be focusing on how to protect rights when it comes to artificial intelligence. What do you wish that comes out today from the workshop?
So first of all, welcome from Malta, from Paola, from the Malta College for Art, Science and Technology here. Today is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for the 4 panels in 4 different member states. A message from our Socialist and Democrats family that we want to put out there is to have an open approach when it comes to discussing all digital dossiers, all digital files, but especially such an important piece of legislation which will be affecting the lives of our citizens. And as a political family, here today we are not discussing a futuristic dossier. We are discussing something which is affecting on a daily basis the choices of our consumers, the fundamental rights of our citizens. Therefore, it is really important in this whole process of negotiations, in this dialogue that we have within the European Parliament, at Council level, at Commission level, to do it right. And one of the most important aspects that we will be discussing here today at MCAST, Paula, is the issue of enforcement, is the issue of giving the right information to our citizens to be able to enforce their rights when such important decisions are being taken by artificial intelligence. Therefore, today we have a wonderful panel here with academics, with students, with stakeholders who will be dissecting this subject in an easy way so that our citizens, those who are viewing this session, will be able to understand what we are doing.
Very good, thank you. We promise you everybody's going to make a lot of effort to try to speak about this subject in the simplest ways, and I am sure that was the general rule across the board. So please do stay with us, and I hope you engage yourself in each workshop. I would now like to go to Italy. There we have Brando Benifei. Brando is the S&D MEP, Artificial Intelligence Act spokesperson. Hi, Brando.
Hi.
I have a question for you, if you can hear us.
Yes.
Because in Italy, they are using the Big Brother concept to address the workshop today. How to avoid AI. And in fact, of course, how to avoid AI as an intruder, not to avoid AI. How to avoid AI as an intruder. So, Brando, I know you're very passionate about this subject and working thoroughly on the legislative. Is Brando with us?
Sì, io sono il relatore del regolamento, quindi...
I am the rapporteur and the negotiator because this is what I'm working on within the European Parliament, working together with Alex and together with the other MEPs. And I'm really engaged and committed to avoid that the regulation on artificial intelligence can somehow skip the real problems in terms of social control, the impact on the fundamental rights, and also the risk to have a surveillance technology so that the personal sensible data are exploited without being aware, without the citizens being aware of the fact that they have to be at the center, at the core of the development of artificial intelligence. In particular, in our workshop, we will focus on these aspects, that is to say, how to make it possible to use artificial intelligence as an opportunity and not a risk for different aspects, such as the one of personal freedom, labor market, and the issues pertaining to fundamental rights of all citizens. So this is one of the aspects that we are working on as a group with particular attention, also when it comes to the negotiation on the text of the regulation, because we want to make sure that there is room to develop the growth of a whole ecosystem for artificial intelligence in Europe, while respecting not only the fundamental rights of citizens, but also the ability to build trust and to keep and to care about the trust we have with these citizens. So we are people and we need technologies, but we should use them properly. Thank you.
Denmark, where we have the S&D MEP, Internal Market and Consumer Protection spokesperson, Christel Schaldemose. Hello, Christel.
Hello, and good evening here from Copenhagen.
Good evening to you too. Christel, in Denmark, you are tackling AI from a safety point of view. What will you be bringing to the table in your workshop?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to say that we are here today hosted by the trade union of the engineers in Denmark, and it's situated in a very beautiful place, but you can't see it because of the darkness. But anyway, what we're going to discuss today is that in the AI proposal from the EU Commission, they made a risk-based approach to AI. But we would like to discuss, is that enough, or do we need to have more? Do we need to have some common principles? Do we need to give users some rights when we're talking about AI? And today with me, I have a very good panel. First and foremost, I have Jens Bostrup, who is going to be our moderator. And then I have two professors in AI, both of them. Thomas, they're called Thomas, both of them as well. And then I have one representing Nikolai, representing the Danish Chamber for Commerce. So I believe, and then we have good people from NGOs behind us. So I'm looking very much forward to have a good discussion and report back to you on what we think we need to do more and better.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Christel. And finally, we go to Leon in Spain. We have MEP Jonas Fernandez, who's understanding, basically the workshop in Spain is understanding AI across the board. And this is what the workshop in Spain will be about, education and understanding of the AI. Jonas, or are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you very much for being with us. And I would like to ask you how and what do you wish to bring out in your workshop today?
Okay, perfect. Now, first, thank you so much for the invitation. Good evening. And of course, it's an honor to participate in this multi-location event, to discuss the future and the present of the artificial intelligence. As you may know, the Spanish member who should be here organizing this event indeed in León should be Ivan García del Blanco. But finally, he cannot be with us because he is unfortunately on a sick leave. So I would like, and I'm sure that all of you wish him a prompt recovery, and we will do our best to conduct the debate in Spain. Most of our panelists are in León. I am very close to León, but I am in Oviedo, but less than 1 hour from León. And I would like to share with you some ideas that Ivan shared to me, because at the end of the day, he is our specialist on artificial intelligence. And Ivan thinks that literacy serves to ensure that all citizens of Europe, and particularly those who have to operate artificial intelligence systems, have a sufficient level of skills, knowledge, and understanding on the benefit and risk that artificial intelligence implies. While we are, indeed, Ivan and Brando and the rest of our colleagues in the Parliament are negotiating the position of the European Parliament on the Artificial Intelligence Act, AI literacy is to be included as a concrete obligation into the regulation in Europe. People, and especially young and elderly, should understand the opportunities and risks of the digital revolution. And to this end, we need to enter into a new age of digital knowledge, what Ivan likes to call a new age of digital enlightenment. An adequate artificial intelligence literacy is now increasingly necessary for citizens, for all generations to participate in society and benefit from accessible digital services to learn, play, work, and progress in our lives. And to discuss on this matter, to analyze maybe with a more cultural or more education perspective, we'll debate with an excellent expert. As I said, most of them in León, I in Oviedo, but I am sure that we will have a very, very brilliant debate about how we could enlarge the literacy on AI. Thank you so much.
Gracias, muchas gracias, Jonas. Thank you for being with us as well. So, as you can see, back to our audience now, we will dive into 4 different but equally important discussions of the legislative surrounding AI. In order to seize its full potential to benefit society, we need to ensure that if ever our rights are compromised or affected, we have enough tools and mechanisms to seek their protection as well as compensation. And this is mainly on these 3 things. That despite the many possible and positive uses of AI, our rights to privacy and protection of personal data must be respected, be it at the workplace, be it when you're looking for a job or walking down the street, or simply even if we're having a bad day. Secondly, that even though not all AI systems may present the same risks or dangers, there should be a common safety net in the EU about how they should be developed in line with our principles and values. And finally, that given the great impact that AI will and is already having in all our lives, not only all those who need to comply with legal requirements about it, but also the rest of us who will live with its use throughout our lives, have a sufficient level of understanding and knowledge about what AI is, how it works, and why it can make such a difference in the quality of our future. And this is what the S&D group in the European Parliament, led by its co-rapporteur, Brando Benifei, is fighting to achieve. Ultimately, it wants to guarantee that in the European Union, we are designing artificial intelligence for all. So before I let you all begin, I would like to say hello to each moderator and introduce them myself. In Malta, we have Alexei De Bono, Director and Chief Operating Officer of IDEA Group. Alexei, why do you think you were chosen to moderate this panel? What's your relationship with AI?
First of all, I've been taught by one of our panelists here, another Alexei.
Yes, that's why I got confused. And I was looking, because we have Alexei, and Alexei.
Exactly. I've been studying AI, I think, for the past 10 years. I run a data science business intelligence company, so it's something really close to my heart and something I love. I think it's really cool what we're discussing here. Finally, we're taking such a powerful tech and making it accessible while still being protected. I think this is the time to establish trust, finally.
Very good. Thank you, Alexei. I would now like to go to Italy, where we have the journalist for Italian Tech and Wired Italy, Andrea Signorella. Hello, Andrea.
Hi.
Hi, Andrea. What about you? What is your relationship with AI, and why are you moderating today's panel?
Well, I'm really passionate about artificial intelligence and about the risks that it poses to our society. And it has been a lot of years that I'm covering this subject, so here I am.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. In Denmark, we have journalist Jens Bostrup. Hello, Jens.
Good evening, Clara.
Good evening. Good evening. Jens, what about your knowledge and understanding of AI, and what are you trying to achieve in today's workshop?
I'm trying to achieve that we can have some concrete suggestions from our panel of experts and the stakeholder, and give that to Crystal, and hopefully she can use that input in the further work.
Very good. Thank you, Jens. And finally, another journalist in Spain, we have Javi Vega. Hello, Javi. Tell us a little bit, Javi, tell us a little bit about your knowledge of AI and how you perceive to conduct your workshop today. Javi, I may ask you to, sorry, we're not hearing your sound, so there may be a technical problem. Can you try speaking again? Okay, we cannot currently hear Javi, but that is the moderator of the Spanish panel, which I hope now will get back with its technical issues and conduct the workshop fully. I will leave it all in the good hands of our moderator, and then we will come back in exactly 1 hour at the end of each workshop, where we will then have our final suggestions and what came out of each topic.
Claire. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to the lineup that we have here. Thank you to the guests this evening. And welcome to our workshop on redress and remedies. And let's start by introducing our people here. So MEP Ajus Saliba, the Vice President of the S&D Group. We have Dr. Jackie Malia, a lawyer who specializes in IT, data protection, IP, and she focuses on AI and disruptive tech. Next to her, Professor Alexei Dingley, Professor of AI at the University of Malta and an overall evangelist of the AI space here. Next, we have Dr. Annalise Seguna, who's a senior legal officer at MDIA with an expertise in AI, cybersecurity, and...
Benvenute, benvenute, benvenuti finalmente alla sezione italiana di questo evento europeo, progettare l'intelligenza artificiale.
Designing artificial intelligence for everyone, organized by the S&D group of the European Parliament. So the title of our workshop is quite clear: avoiding AI as a big brother. So how to avoid that artificial intelligence can turn into a big brother. And this is what we will focus on within the EU AI Act that is currently being discussed at the European Parliament. We will discuss opportunities and risks that are implied in artificial intelligence and how AI systems could breach, could impact on the fundamental rights of human beings, of citizens, and what are the limitations and how to make these systems more reliable. In particular, among the issues to underline within our workshop, there are some proposals, some amendments that have been submitted by the S&D group, that is to say, to hold accountable the users of AI, of high-risk AI systems, then the proposals to ban the biometric identification for the police forces, and also to avoid the social scoring practices by both public and private authorities, or as, for example, the emotional recognition. So many issues, but I start with Brando Banifei, MEP for the S&D group and co-rapporteur for the regulations on the AI systems, Emanuela Girardi, founder and president of the POP AI, Diletta ISIS, researchers of the ethical intelligence of AI, Chiara Foglietta, counselor for the ecological transition for the city of Torino, Juan Carlo De Martins, professor at the automation and IT department of the Politecnico here in Torino.
Il nostro workshop, abbiamo il tempo.
I would start our workshop, so this is the time we have, so let's try to stick to the time we are given, so maybe with answers that are not too long so that we have time for some questions from the audience. But I just would ask Brando Banifei to tell us something about this, the negotiations that we know are very important. and that it's something that you are really committed to. So if you can please give us, tell us something more about the AI systems.
Tanto grazie a
Thank you very much. Thanks to our panelists who accepted to be to take part of this discussion. I thank them one by one, because I think it is important to try and develop similar moments for discussion. This event is also recorded and can be viewed separately in order to disseminate our work and our discussions with the people that are here. We already discussed a lot, and this work will continue in 2023 as well. Realistically, 2023 will be the entire year will be required to complete our negotiation with the European Parliament and the member states in order to obtain this regulation, which is a tool which will not this regulation will regulate how they will be used by public administration. Well, AI tools will be used. This is not a directive. It will not have to be adopted by the Parliament. So it is the most powerful European Union tool because it is adopted at community level between us and the Council of Member States. So member states together, not Italy on its own. I started this work with Minister Colau. Now the government has changed. We have a new government, so we will have to talk with the new government. And on some of the topics that were reminded earlier, the topics we will focus during our discussion, the topic concerning supervision, data control. With the member states, there's been some conflicts because in this initial phase where the European Parliament is negotiating on how things should have been, they should act in order to increase protection for consumers and citizens, in order to disseminate obligations between enterprises, public administration, and final users, a tool that can be used by public administration to be used with to interface with the citizens or by a company with its workers or customers. So we wanted to have this impact assessment on the fundamental rights. This work, as well as strengthening the prohibition of supervision through facial recognition cameras, this topic has already been tackled by the Italian press. And these are topics where the European Parliament has a very protective approach on protecting fundamental rights. So the Parliament is looking at individual protection, while governments have more of a supervisory approach, which is intrinsic of governments. And this may generate a conflict. And this has also an impact at the economic level. There is this type of activities like predictive policy. I'd like to mention this because we made a proposal to prohibit AI tools to do what could be done as the movie Minority Report, predicting where crimes will be committed. And because we've seen where these instruments have been implemented, there are a few cases already. Results are not effective, but they breach fundamental rights and principles. to conclude, we want, and I mentioned this in my introduction as well, we wanted to have a system of AI in Europe which could allow the development of innovative business models, generating jobs and opportunities, but we want to do according to our principles. And so we should avoid serious damages made to people and then try and find repair measures in courts. And so this is not the approach that the sustainable approach through certification, through high-risk approach. I would like to say that the system that we built, I was at the United Nations in July, and I talked to the Secretary General of the UN for Technologies. This mechanism, according to which a pyramid is built, the risk pyramid is built. They identify the systems that have the highest impact on safety, on health, on the fundamental rights of citizens, and those are the rights that are more strongly regulated, while AI that are less risky should not be too much regulated, so they can be used more easily by citizens. So this scheme of the risk pyramid, in the discussion I had with lawmakers in the US, India, Canada, was very interesting. There is a different approach in terms of certification. We are more demanding here on data quality control. We want more control on citizen personal data. But the idea of creating risk categories was welcomed in the rest of the world. Thank you. Among the topics you mentioned is the one of facial recognition, one of the most discussed topics here in Italy when we talk about the system presenting risks for society, which can be implemented through AI. So I'd like to take the opportunity of the presence of Chiara Foglietta to talk about this aspect. Many administrations, even municipal administrations in Italy, fell in love with the potentials of supervision. And so administrations try to adopt this system. There have been some attempts in several administrations, and in the past, it happened also here in Turin. What is your idea about this system, and what is your approach? First of all, let's say that I wrote a doctorate thesis on AI. I'm not against to this technology, but as I often say, we have to govern technology. We should not be governed by technology. In my last administrative mandate, I was in the minority at the municipal council, and then I was the councillor of this city in social innovation. I inherited the Argo project. This project was co-funded by the city of Turin and partly by the Ministry of Interior. Speaking of cameras, not with facial recognition, but trying to study the predictive behavior of citizens through biometric characteristics. So what happens? This project called Argo had four key parts. Provide the municipal police with the body cam, provide the vehicles of dashboards, cameras, and AI in order to equip these cameras. If in the meantime something happens, associations apply to the privacy guarantor on the use of AI in this context. Then I came in. I'm not against AI. there are a lot of calls. We candidate Turin in order to find, to better in-depth discuss about privacy and ethics. I asked our officers, are we sure that we can really investigate the citizens' behavior so much? Are we sure we really want to do it? Because if you ask the Council on Innovation, the answer is no. So I tried to involve citizens. I set up a working table with experts. Many are also present here, and one of them is Juan Carlos, with associations, with privacy network, with legal experts, and with offices. And I explained to them the risk we were running. The city, by the way, doesn't have a regulation on video surveillance, and this is a very slippery slope. We postponed many projects because we didn't have a code design from the bottom up. Most of the decisions were made from the top down. What we were trying to do is copy what other cities are doing, like the city of Barcelona or Amsterdam or Rotterdam. They changed their approach. They involved from the bottom up citizens in order to see how they could provide infrastructure in the city. There are other convincing experts and on which I push on AI. For example, when we talk the phytostaticity of plants or sensors so that the underpasses can light up red lights if there is too much rain. So it's not a no a priori, but we need our guiding light should be the individual digital rights and design, and make sure that technology is not given from the top down to citizens. Politicians may fall in love with this technology without investigating the real goals. So we anticipated a little bit the work that Brando Benifei made, but the involvement of people and putting some limits is something that a responsible city and administration should do. So build a perimeter and try not to go beyond that perimeter, reminding that the city of Torino has some regulation on citizens' data treatment. The name itself is worrying by itself. Manuela Girardi, recognition, emotion recognition. This is one of the possible implications that uses that should be banned because they have a direct impact on our society. This name, not very reassuring, has already been mentioned. These applications can be seen through different perspectives with the pros and cons. So can you tell us, first of all, what it is? Because maybe we don't know how it works and what we talk about when we talk about emotions recognition. What are the risks that you see in such a tool? And are there applications for which this tool is instead very useful? Thank you very much and good evening, everybody. What is called emotional AI, or the use of AI to recognize emotion, is a branch of AI that has been existing since the 90s. And it has to do with the analysis, recognition, and the replicability of human emotions. It was created to improve the interaction between man and machine. Then it has been further developed in different ways, which led the European Parliament to make a proposal to regulate this type of application or even ban it. It has a much broader approach. It recognizes the content of what we say, our gesture, the way we say it, our body gesture, and also our voice, the tone of voice, the pauses, the speed of our speech. What is the meaning of recognizing emotions and use it in a predictive method? It means identifying the personality of people, and that has a very high risk because you can even influence the behavior of people very much. So on the one side, there is a useful possible applications, but very high risks at the same time. This branch of emotional AI divided in three areas. The one on the text recognition, concerning mainly what we know as sentiment analysis, which is used a lot in the recognition of reviews. Think about the TripAdvisor. If you make a review on TripAdvisor, they can analyze the text through language analysis and understand if the review is positive, negative, or neutral. So you can really see our emotional content of our review. However, that analysis is not very accurate all the time. Despite even today, there are very much developed models like CPT-3, or in January there should be GPT-4, which is trained on 100 billion trillion parameters, which is a huge, unthinkable number. So it will be able to recognize everything we write in our text, and that is very much used. It's not accurate, very accurate, but it is very much used. Then there is the audio, so audio recognition or sound recognition, which is used by call centers. For example, we have customer services where we can recognize in real time the dissatisfaction of the client by the tone of voice, by the speed of the pauses of the person speaking. And the last part, which raises more concerns, is the one concerning facial recognition, not only biometric recognition, as Chiara was saying, but the recognition of any movement we do with our pupils or facial muscles or body gesture. And that really allows to understand the emotional state of the person, and it allows to influence and understand that personality. And that is used especially in the human resources. It is an area in which it raises highest concerns. During an interview, you can recognize if the person is sure or not, if he's lying or is telling the truth. But there are also positive applications, because if we think in the healthcare sector, there is a system that is very much used in the UK. It is the Babylon system, and that is used by doctors as decision-making support, analyzing all vital parameters of the patients, elaborates them, and provide the decision-making base and helps intervening in real time, or in some cases of application in the operating theater, where cameras monitor the status of the patient and can provide a signal of stress of the patients in a preventive way. And so we should always keep in mind the double use of AI. It could be a very powerful instrument with a lot of uses, but if you want to use it in a malevolent way, the risks must be governed and prevented. So the risk mitigation part steps in. Another aspect which is underestimated or underlined because of its importance is the impact assessment. Initially, in the European regulation for AI, the impact regulation of these algorithms that these algorithms may have on society was only in the hands of the manufacturer. Now, during the discussion, with the regulation, the aim is to shift a part of the responsibility on risk assessment on users. Diletta, first of all, do you agree? Why do you think it is important to do this step, and what are the reasons pushing in that direction? Do you think it is sufficient to have algorithm impact assessment to limit the potential risks of some AI tools? Thank you, Andrea. Well, first of all, I'd like to specify something about the text of the regulation, what it says with regard to the impact assessment. I read it fully over the months, and what we are very sorry about, and that we highlighted several times at a national level, and even at the European Parliament, the fact that up until now, in the text of the regulation, they only talk about impact self-assessments, impact self-assessment, besides biometric and facial recognition, also for other risks, high-risk AI tools. In most cases, there is always a self-assessment. This is what manufacturers are asked to do a self-assessment on the impact that the system might have if used. We think that this is a big problem. I would like to talk about impact assessment as a tool that we would like to use beyond Europe and have a global impact if these assessments are mandatory and made not by the administrations themselves. There are two categories of assessments that should be made. We talk about risk assessment when we think about assessing how an AI tool could behave in the real world after application. You were asking me earlier if such a system could be useful and make it mandatory for those using that system, not only for manufacturers. That would be key, because artificial AI systems are not the only manufactured for a single purpose. They are most of the time multi-purpose. And so what we care about is how these tools are used. So the impact assessment or the risk assessment should be mandatory also for users. Let's talk about, for example, public administrations. An impact assessment made in Naples may be different from one made in Trento or Turin. So we have to distinguish between risk assessment ex ante and impact assessment to be performed on the actual impacts, real impacts of the AI system on society. We think that this is really necessary, to put it very clearly, because as we said so far, I think that we really need AI, and there aren't many systems that we should be prohibited, besides biometric recognition, the credit scoring, and other examples that maybe will come out. I think that in general, there are many uses of AI that we can do and consider them acceptable. It depends how we do it, and we can do that only by involving people, like Chiara is doing in Torino, people sitting at the table asking questions, do we need this system? What do we want to do with it? Who will benefit from this system? Who will not benefit from it? These are key questions that we ask before starting the project and which set the route or the direction that that tool, AI tool, will take. Another thing I'd like to say is that there is no impact assessment without governance. So we can have impact assessment on fundamental rights, but we need to have a clear idea on the governance. Otherwise, they are a useless tool. Privacy Network during these months and next year will try and push in order to have Europe identifying in member states a clear idea on who should be in charge of this. Brando will talk to the new government. You know that a ministry that should have dealt with this does not exist anymore. We were not happy with what the previous government did because basically they did nothing. And they did not set a line, a road to follow. So these are the fundamental things. First of all, impact assessments cannot be made on a voluntary basis, and they should not be self-assessments, because in that case there is no enforcement and nobody will do it. We know how it works. We should identify a clear methodology forcing people to do it, because that's the only way to make sure that the AI does not cause damages to fundamental rights. And lastly, we have several models. I know one in particular. I know that Brando knows it as well. That is the Dutch model. Many of us knows what happened last year, this big scandal that showed a massive violation of fundamental rights of Dutch citizens perpetrated through an algorithm for many years, and the responsibility was on the government. And the algorithm was not the guilty party. So they have learned the lesson, and what they did now is that they developed an impact assessment framework on human rights, which will be implemented nationally. So in general, all public administration in the Netherlands, if they wanted to implement AI projects involving citizens' rights, will have to go through this assessment framework. And so they are also creating a national coalition in order to govern all AI projects. Also, based on what we've said so far, it is clear how AI is very pervasive in our society. We go from Netflix to control systems. We really go through the entire spectrum, Juan Carlos. And politics is also trying to regulate these tools and see, maybe limit or ban some uses. And we have the feeling that politics as well is maybe trying to limit and some tools which have already been used, by the way. So I wanted to ask you, how do you see this process? What do you think? What should we do? What is your take?
Well, thank you for this question, and I try to sort of give an introduction or a different sort of a lateral perspective. The very positive thing is that we are discussing here tonight, together with a a representative of the European Parliament because technology is a political factor. Technology is not something that comes from who knows where and is it's just made by human forces, by people that can be perfectly identified. So this is a positive thing for the politics to consider technology as something that can be shaped and designed, because otherwise it will be someone else, shaping technology. That is to say, for example, the economic forces. So thank you for inviting me here tonight. And second thing is that we should follow Confucius' recommendations. So the very first thing to do is to correct the names. This is what Confucius tells his pupil. But why? Yes, because this is a very important and very first step to act, to take action properly. But why I'm telling you this? Because as I'm not young any longer, I know that anything relating to digital is typically designed like this, because if Silicon Valley decides that something technological that is concrete, if this has to become the new priority on the media, then of course this crosses the ocean, and then we have the very same computing, big data, automatic self-driving cars, and so on. But this, sort of structure of waves coming and going also involves politics, because someone creates a frame, and when this frame is accepted, of course, this will have an impact on everything coming afterwards. So my recommendation would be, first of all, to understand that this is a sort of inevitable economic and social process, but that we should learn how to take a step backwards and asking ourselves if that frame that is proposed is the best one to reflect upon these themes. And I want to tell you this because artificial intelligence, AI, as a definition, the one that I also use, but it's not something true. This is what the marketing wants us to use. This is sort of my IT colleagues back in 1955. They wanted to have $30,500 from the Rockefeller Foundation to study what they back then called artificial intelligence on the basis of very sorts of requirements, Minsky, Shannon, according to which any human principle can be applied to a machine. And this is what they wanted to study, something that we have questioned over the time. So the definition artificial intelligence, my colleagues back then chose this because that was a good way to get the money from the Rockefeller Foundation. So intelligence, and there is no shared definitions of intelligence. And then artificial, which is really, really ambiguous. But this is sort of, misleading thinking, because 90% of what we've been saying tonight, artificial intelligence could also be called digital or IT, and that would be just the same if we used these different definitions. But IT engineering, sounds a little bit old, so digital or artificial intelligence, but it's really the same. And so while amending names, instead of saying artificial intelligence, let's try to be more precise, because we have machines, we have software, so hardware and software, and algorithms that can be more or less sophisticated. So AI is everywhere. You were saying yes, but we are most of the times in front of a computer, frustrated because nothing is working. If AI were so pervasive, then we wouldn't be so frustrated. And it's true that in any field, so politics, but also research, in any I feel that industry, at least among us, among ourselves, when we want to really understand how things work, we should really change the names without including marketing, because most of the things that you do when you want to sell a product is simply not true, because AI can do a lot of things, but not everything. There are a lot of things that just do not work, and that in some cases are really dangerous. So emotional AI, as Diletta was saying, is, well, this makes us think of Cesare Lombroso, but it's just fake, though potentially very dangerous. So in my opinion, I will conclude saying that, okay, this media wave this time is to be taken positively, because it makes it possible, make us, reflect upon these digitalizations, where Europe is really behind schedule on very concrete things, because AI is now fashionable. We think we discuss about this, but we are, behind schedule for the most operating systems, because they all come from the USA. So this is not of state of the art what we do. The big data farm that make the artificial infrastructures work, are just made and created and designed by American high-tech companies. So that's why we should discuss about this. Computing, big data, artificial intelligence is good, and this can also be a risk, because we are not focusing on some other very important things. But I have to thank the European Parliament for discussing about this, for also about other issues that are not that fashionable but really important. So before opening the Q&A session, and the audience is now also asked to speak, but I maybe would like to go back to what Juan Carlos was saying, because we know that in the digital world, in the world of AI, we have the USA on one side and then China on the other side, and Europe is, between these two powerful blocks with a very special role. But back to the example of GDPR, because here Europe was really a pioneer in the field of privacy regulation and has produced regulations that is a global reference when it comes to these issues. Do you have, the feeling that the same could happen also for the regulation on AI? Well, I am the negotiator at the European Parliament, so I would be more than happy to be among the author of such a central piece of legislation. But I'm afraid this will not be the case, because this Brussels fact is there. Because as I was telling you at the beginning, I really asked by governments all over the world and legislators all over the world to discuss about this, because with respect to the standards and interoperability, there is a lot of attention to what we are doing, trying to find common points. But there are so many different approaches. Just to go back to one of the last issues we've touched upon, for example, we are still discussing and quarreling about the definition of the whole thing, because there are several definitions. One is by the OSCE. There are today definitions that somehow try to understand if this is pure machine learning or something different. So the debate about definition is quite lively, because part of the legislation is exactly about this. What is the object of this piece of legislation and what is not within? So research and development, and to what extent this is not included or covered by this act. So the debate, the discussion is very complex and articulated. And I want to say this with respect to what you were saying. So the impact assessment, one of the reasons why, or the reason why this regulation is being issued is very simple, because the higher the number is of product intelligence, the higher the danger is for a fragmented legislations across Europe. So this is why we need these regulations. Otherwise, well, Germany was already working on its own, and this is the reason why now the Commission is proposing this common regulation, and this is to regulate the market, because I am fighting, and I had several meetings in the last weeks, because the INAIL in Italy, we were discussing about health and safety at work, and this is also an issue that it's not easy to include in the AI regulations, because health and safety is quite a complicated issue, but this is an internal market regulations, and that's why the rules to introduce, to launch these products in the market is really at the heart of the regulations. So the definition of high risk, the rules according to which a product that is identified as a high-risk product is really at the heart of the regulations. But Diletta Whiskas was really referring to this. This is the self-certification or done by third parties. And this is what I proposed. I proposed to have this certified by third parties, even though it is impossible that with the parliament and with the governments too, we can find an agreement upon this, because the timing for this certification by third parties would really require more papers, more bureaucracy, and I know we won't find an agreement about this. We will come to a compromise, and I'm trying to, for example, to negotiate this for some uses, that is personal safety and health, that for these, at least we have a certification by third parties. So at least for some issue, and public administration. For example, we want to have the public registry for more transparency about all the uses of AI, and also the impact assessment of the users, in this case, a public administration. So to have, at least for public administrations, to make this mandatory. And of course, there are different political parties. This is a workshop organized by the S&D group. So with the Green, with the left-wing parties, with some of the liberal parties, we have quite similar opinions and positions. Well, but with the Popular Party and with other political parties, we are really, we have different ideas, because the interests of business and the reduction of burden is very strong in some political areas. And it's quite, understandable. This needs to be balanced, because we've included these so-called sandboxes that are to promote the development of new models, also in the field of research, not only in the business world, because, of course, we know that Europe can develop its own model of artificial intelligence, but we are ambitious enough, because we are the house of the home for the GDPR in Italy, and the personal data protection. We want a very special model of AI, and I am convinced that this has also to do with the fact that we are quite a demanding democracy in Europe, because we want to avoid destructive approaches when it comes to technology that are sometimes also adopted by the politicians. But if just look at the Dutch case, where families were destroyed, where children were just taken away, when social rights were destroyed, because these were foreign families, for the algorithms that was not working, the government systems that was really bad, and this led to the dismissals of most government members. But this is the case that you mentioned that is particularly popular, and this really is what we want to avoid and why we need a specific EU regulation for AI. And I can open the discussion with the audience, and we have some time for some questions. We can take a couple of questions altogether. A very interesting discussion. These are things that are quite difficult for me, but one of the aspects that I liked most was the fact to have a brand for the discussion. This is one of the issues that are not debated any longer. Big data was at the heart of any debate until some time ago, but it seems to me that AI is a constant gathering of personal data. So the approach from from any left-wing party should be trying to understand how these data are used. So big data were originally to be used as a common good, or at least that was one of the proposals. But now I come to my question. So that initial approach had somehow has gone. So we have now something different, or a different approach. So before answering your reply to your question, maybe let's see if we have some other questions from the audience. Yes, I have two different issues or questions. The one about the data protection that has already been mentioned, and there are different perspectives, because today data are at the basis of AI. This is the most important asset. But in the public administration, also looking at GDPR, many of the possibly available data are not accessible or not immediately used for some good uses. And when it comes to GDPR, it's not something I want to question, but I know that this could be part or could be in the discussion of what the European debate, because this is something really huge in Europe. And then the second issue or question, that is to say the involvement of citizens, because I read that it is difficult for the legislation to follow, to keep the pace with the technological evolutions, while we should never forget moral and ethical values or responsibility principles that can work if they are also including and involving citizens. So this is now my question. What are the tools and the resources that the country members in the European Union can use to involve citizens more? Of course, such initiative, and initiatives such as this one, is, of course, very good, but not enough. And this, in turn, also touches upon the theme of marketing that Juan Carlos was mentioning, because the private businesses or companies and the money that they can put into this, of course, is higher. But to build something different or alternatives, of course, we need different resources. We already have 3 questions. I know that we are running out of time. Maybe Juan Carlos wanted to say something or to answer this last question. This is the frame that I mentioned. I cannot prove this, but I know that I have people over there in Silicon Valley telling me that big data are starting being negative because big data reminding of Big Brother. So this definition of AI that is now almost 60 years old is being used. This is back to the frame, and this is what's happened. And the second thing that has happened immediately after, and here my source is really reliable, is to activate a reflection upon the ethics of AI that is coming from the Silicon Valley. And why? Because when it comes to ethics, or talking about ethics is a very elegant way not to talk about politics or power. so sort of, cover. So we are now running out of time, but I really agree with what Juan Carlos has just said, not to, minimize or reduce the impact of guidelines, of ethical principles, but sometimes, at least in my experience as a legislator, when these issues are discussed, it's just to hide something different, so the different political issues. But on some tables, I think, and I see that the risk is there. For example, the emotional AI, facial recognition, biometric assessment. I hear government saying we just need guidelines. We don't need too strict rules, and then the judges will say. And this is what the USA have just done. So a list of 4 principles to be followed. That is ethical principles, but that have nothing in terms of legislation. So I have a degree in philosophy, and this is what I deal with. But ethics, as a word, as a definition, does not include the themes of policy, of justice, and of everything we need. So the involvement of citizens, briefly, shortly, because our association, I think, is working on this exactly. And I was mentioning the national governance before, because I think this is something that should be deepened and implemented at country level, at regional level. It's very difficult that the Europe can, set a frame about how to involve citizens in such projects when the public administrations, for example, are involved. And we have this project, automated administration project. This is the national database that Brando was mentioning, where all algorithms are there used by the public administrations. So we've sort of anticipated what we would like the EU guidelines or the EU piece of legislation do. That is to say, something that really includes everything that is done by the public administration in the life of citizens. So the Chiara was saying, and the example set by the city of Turin should become, in my opinion, a case study or a best practice to be used all over Italy. So the idea to involve a committee or, a set of people that can bring different perspectives and also to understand how to involve citizens. So to ask them, do you want cameras? How many cameras? Maybe not cameras, but different things and tools. So to really listen to the voice of citizens, and that's what I would like to the government and the public administrations to do. So big data as a common good, something that was really at the heart of the debate, but now we have the impression that this approach is not used any longer. Is there anything we can say about this? Well, I try to say something, because data should all be open and accessible, and then you wake up one morning and there you have reality, because Domenico was saying this. So this is very complex issues, but the citizens actually normally deal with a much lower levels of this. So the database of the city of Torino cannot communicate with the database of the city of Milano. And this means that you cannot park your car with the same parking permission. So this is quite a serious black hole we have when it comes to public administration. But this is just to remind us all about what the previous government, for example, has done. We have the health, electronic health dossier, and I'm that's my the theme of my degree. This is a country focusing on telemedicine, and this means that this is not a country that is really investing in this. So AI is at the heart of our debate. The European Parliament is, issuing a regulation about this, but we just miss the very basic infrastructure, and we are running out of time. It's already red, so but I really think that all data should be open, but that this pact between citizens and administration should be as transparent as possible, so based on very specific rules, on very clear rules. So 90% of our data is on clouds in the States. This is something we should not forget, and we should, of course, discuss about the AI, but also other technologies, clouds and connection, microchips, and skills to use this. And so we should not forget that if we have to work out a strategy to rule regulations, so these technologies should also be developed and to not to miss an opportunity. And China, what we were presenting the first regulation, China has just issued the regulation about the recommendation systems that has already been implemented in China. So we have 30 seconds more. I'd like to thank Diletta, Chiara Foglietta, Juan Carlos De Martin, Emanuela Geladi for being with us. Thank you, Brando Benifei, of course. We wish you a successful work. We know it's not an easy task, but we are supporting you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone, to the audience with their contributions, to our discussion with the questions. And now we are back to Malta. Thank you.
Estamos a tiempo porque la explosión de datos que tenemos por delante exige un marco legal, un marco regulatorio claro, estricto, que ponga el ser humano en el centro del desarrollo de la inteligencia artificial y por supuesto, una regulación que permita aprovechar, ¿no?, todas las potencialidades de la inteligencia artificial y mitigar, reducir o eliminar aquellos riesgos que estamos viendo ya.
Muchas gracias a todos. Ha sido un auténtico lujo.
Welcome back. Welcome back to all of you. I do hope that you all had a very fruitful and engaging debate. This is the moment where I actually now give the floor to each country. Of course, the MEP of each country participating will give us an overview of what the main fruit of that debate, of course, was today. We have around 5 to 6 minutes each to share between each country, and then, of course, we will have our final and concluding remarks. I would like to start with Malta, since we are here. Alex, I'll give the floor to you. Please do let us know, let the rest of the people know watching us what this debate in Malta here was about.
So first of all, we had a very interesting debate. Thanks a lot to all the panelists and also to academics and also other stakeholders who participated in this very insightful discussion. We tackled one of the most important aspects of the AI Act. It is useless to do all these safeguards without having a mechanism to be able to enforce what we are putting down on paper. And enforcement, redress are fundamental elements in this concept. I think that our discussion related about the importance of having a human-centric approach, which is totally in line with the priorities of our political family, with the priorities of the S&D political family. And we touched upon the importance, ultimately, to have more awareness from our users, from our consumers, to be able to enforce their rights. Again, it is useless to have all these mechanisms in place without having a situation whereby our citizens will be aware on what is going on, therefore the importance of having information, therefore the importance of having explainability, and we touched a lot upon the issue of explainability, the complex systems of AI, the use intrinsic use of data and the difficulties that we have ultimately also to pinpoint our fingers on what is going on and who actually is having this responsibility. So ultimately, this was a discussion dealing with not only the initial draft deals with the issue of public enforcement. We want to take it stepping it up. Also to give more tools for our citizens, for our users, for our consumers to be able ultimately to enforce these rights that we have in this AI Act. Again, I want to thank all the panelists. I think it was a very informative discussion, and we try to dissect as much as possible this very complex piece of legislation. Now, I believe we are in the 10th, 11th draft. During the negotiations, the draft is always building up with more ambitions. And I would also like to thank all my colleagues. Some of them are here leading other panels. Brando Benefei, who is our co-rapporteur in the Internal Market Committee, our shadow rapporteur in the LIBE Committee, and also Crystal Schaldemose, who worked on another piece of legislation as rapporteur, the Digital Markets Act, which is also working in tandem, will be working in tandem with the AI Act ultimately to create a safer ecosystem, a more transparent ecosystem for our consumers, for our users, ultimately, because we want that our users and consumers have more trust in the system. And we believe that if we give all these tools to our citizens, to our users and consumers, the trust will be bigger in AI systems which are conditioning our lives.
Thank you very much, Alex. I move to Italy now, and I invite Brando to share with us the fruit, the conclusions of the debate which you had in Italy. Brando?
Yes. Yes, thank you. We had a very good discussion about the risks and opportunities of AI, especially looking at the need for procedures that can involve citizens, that can give them trust in the system. And also we reflected on the frame around AI, what it means, what is the kind of discussion that we are having. We have delved into some details of the negotiations we are doing about the fundamental rights impact assessment, the prohibitions on some part of the emotional recognition, the predictive policing, the biometric recognition for surveillance purposes. So we have looked at how we are trying to protect our citizens, how to avoid unnecessary risks, and we have concluded that we need people to be able to say what they really want. The technology should not be imposed, but it should be something that is part of the choice in a democratic context.
Thank you, Brando. So you left from the AI being the intruder, the grande fratello, to amici. Correct?
Kind of, yes.
We know, we watch a lot of Italian television, so of course for us, amici is friends. We want AI to be our friend. Yes. Thank you, Brando. Thank you very, very much. I now move to Denmark. Christel, how has your debate been, Christel?
Well, the debate was really, really good, and I have taken a lot of notes, and I can already tell Alex and Brando that we still have some work to do until we have made this AI Act perfect. So, but let me try to come up with a couple of things we discussed. First and foremost, we have this risk-based approach from the AI proposal from the Commission. And we discussed, is that really necessary to have that in all? For instance, if you use algorithms in the airport to place bins, to do it in the right manner, is that a real risk? Should we even use our common principles? Does that really make sense for something that is not, or apparently not, as dangerous? So we discussed that, but we also discussed how can we avoid bias in many of the systems. We had a lot of very, very good examples on concrete, how we already today use AI. For instance, we have a very famous example in Denmark. When you call 112, they use algorithms to help the doctor to come up with a diagnosis, and that is a very good example of where it works. But how can we make sure that it is not going to be overburdened? We also talked about this, about explainability. How can we make that work in a good manner? Sometimes the professors told me that we cannot always explain the algorithm in a good manner, but it works. So what if we do it like when we work with medicine, where we don't actually always know why this medicine works, but we know from clinical research that it does work without too many side effects. Maybe if that's the same on AI, couldn't we live with that? But on the other hand, we also think that it is very important that we have right to complain. Where do we do that? So we have had a lot of good examples, and we still need to do more to make sure that it works. But we also talked about that we need to be cautious about putting too many rules and regulations into this proposal, because it needs to be workable as well. So bureaucracy, no thanks. But on the other hand, we also know that we need to be able to go back and look what worked and what didn't work, and learn from that. But we are only in the beginning of this. Yeah, well, there were, in fact, also a very good example on why don't we talk more about how we use AI in the everyday life. The financial, the the insurance sector, etc. So we need to look into that as well. So we still have some work to do, but it was very inspiring, and I have learned a lot. And if I should have one sentence to conclude, is that it is extremely complex.
Yes, yes, it's true. I think, thank you, Christelle. That was something that came across here. And probably Jonas, who were addressing their workshop on the education aspect of AI, can enlighten us with some of the things that came up in the workshop. Of course, this education is something that is going to have to be implemented across all countries. But please, Jonas, do let us know how the debate went in your country.
Hello, good evening again. And maybe the word that you just said, enlightenment, I think that it represents the debate that we had. I would like to congratulate, of course, Lucia, Victoria, Violeta, and Javi. The debate was really, really inspired, really interesting, and I think that at least I learned so much on this matter, because, as you know, Ivan has to be here today in the debate, and if the word is enlargement, I would like to go back to a sentence that I always listen to Ivan. Because Ivan always say that we are entering in a new age of digital enlightenment, and I think that maybe these four words could represent the risks and the opportunity that we face with the evolution of the AI. And in the debate, we decided, we debated that the European Union should become global leader in AI, and the European Union should pioneer a regulatory framework on this matter, the first of this kind in the world, as we did in other aspects, in other sectors in the past, as we do every day, which will champion human-centric, as my friend Brando said before me, anchors in human rights and guided by ethical guidelines. So we want an AI that will be for the common good and will serve the people and the society as a whole. Europe must promote international standards based on the respect of human rights, democracy, the rule of law, and in line with the principles of human oversight, fairness, accountability, and transparency. In the debate, we analyze how we could improve the level of the education. We analyze the difference inequalities that there are also in the developing on the AIA. There are territorial and physical inequalities, gender inequalities, race inequalities, or income inequalities, And I think that we as social democrats, we have to take time also to analyze the impact, the redistributional impact of these new technologies in our life. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. Take care, Ivan. Thank you so much for the debate. And I am sure that next week in Brussels or in Vienna, we will come back to our work to develop this new regulatory chapter on AA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you all for your contribution. Do stay with us. We have now concluding remarks, both from Alex and Brando. Let's start with Alex. Alex, first of all, before I come to the question I have, what curiosity do you have now about each debate that went on in other countries from the little you've heard?
I think that we are very much on the ball when it comes to the negotiations, when it comes to our priorities as an S&D family, with all our rapporteurs in, if I'm not mistaken, 5 different committees in the European Parliament, apart from the 2 main committees. So what the academics, what the civil society has told us today is ultimately being already reflected, and we will continue to reflect on that in what we are going to continue to do in the next couple of weeks until we conclude the first part of the negotiations, to have a solid position in the EP, ultimately a position which will work not in favor of big tech companies, but will be working in favor of our citizens and our consumers. So these discussions are of utmost importance for us, because it's always a learning curve to have an open door policy.
Yes.
And this is our political family. It's a political family of an open door policy, to continue to listen, to learn, to get the feedback from our citizens, to implement it in European Union legislation, which is novel legislation, not only at EU level, but also at an international level.
Thank you. How do you see the impact of the Social Democrats in the European Parliament when it comes to this piece of legislation? And also, what have you been doing in order to coordinate this common approach amongst other members?
So first of all, this is a very exciting time for us as an S&D political family, especially when it comes to the digital portfolios. Next week in Vienna, in our external group meeting, we will be approving our revised S&D digital policy paper, a 45-pager, which is, let's put it like that, our Bible when it comes to digital policy, touching from cybersecurity, touching to the AI Act. We have a whole chapter dealing with AI, touching upon data and all the aspects that we are dealing in right now at an EU level, and also our ambition of what we want to see during this legislature and also in the next legislatures. So, as I said in my remarks, we are trying to keep an open approach as much as possible. As an S&D political family, we are leaders when it comes to the biggest digital pieces of legislations. We were leaders in the Digital Services Act, in the Digital Markets Act. When it came to the GDPR, we introduced a number of concepts. We were leaders when it came to other pieces of legislation which are bringing a change in people's lives, such as the universal charger. And we will continue to do so. And we can continue to do so by maintaining this open approach, by listening, by continuing to increase our outreach, not only remaining in the Brussels bubble, but going directly as we are doing today in each and every member state. But before I conclude, I would like to thank the S&D Secretariat, our staff in the digital Europe working group, our communications team. This is a first also for our political family, whereby we have an activity like this, which is connected at the same time with 4 discussions taking place in 4 different member states. I think, and I believe that this will not be the first, that this will only be the first. We will be having a lot more of these events to engage as much as possible in an open way with our citizens, with our stakeholders, with experts at member state level to bring it right. Because when it comes to digital, we have big responsibility on our shoulders, not just to regulate, not just to move forward legislation, but to do it in the right way, to do it in a way that will strengthen our values and ultimately protect our citizens.
Very good. Thank you, Alex. I move to Brando in Italy. Brando, in particular to you, what are the next steps And are you confident that your political group will be successful in getting these priorities across the finish line?
Yes, I am, I would say, cautiously optimistic because I see that the negotiations in the parliament are going well. We see that the parliament is mostly united in many of the crucial aspects. In fact, one topic that was discussed more in the Malta seminar, the one about the governance, is one of the topics where there are more differences in the approaches of the parliamentarians. But globally, I would say the parliament is quite united in defending a human-centric approach to AI. My worry is more the negotiation with the council, because I see the different approach when we look at the personal freedoms, at the use of these instruments for social control. So we will need to be very strong, with a strong lead by our group when we will negotiate in the next months. I am optimistic that we can get a good result that can be useful for all European citizens.
Thank you very much, Brando. I think that brings us to the conclusion of today. One final question that I have. If today there were participants out there being engaged like I was, I'm not directly involved, but it was extremely interesting to hear all of you talk, and I would love for all this to be simplified in a way that I can understand it. And when my 6-year-old comes to me and tells me, "Ma, the phone brought up something that I was talking about," just like you said, I know what to answer him and how he can feel protected, that this is the way forward. So I would like to see how we can continue being engaged in what's going on at a European level through what groups or contacts that I can refer to.
So first of all these discussions will be all online on all the S&D platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on all our channels. So all those who wanted to follow the 4 discussions, 4 very interesting discussions that we had, but they had to follow the Malta discussion or the discussion in Italy without being able also to follow the other discussions. All of these discussions are recorded and will be on all our platforms. We are a very open political group. Our channels, online channels, are very active. We are pushing forward a lot of material and also explaining in non-technical terms what are we doing with these very complex pieces of legislation, so that our citizens can better understand what we are doing. But ultimately, they can ask us all the questions that they want. Our channels are always so open. Our MEPs are always replying and interacting with our citizens. So feel free, if you have any questions, our channels are there. First of all, like, follow all our channels, and you can also ask and interact directly with our members.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you to all the panelists. Alexei, for moderating such an interesting panel, and of course the audience for being here. And my thanks goes to also to all those who participated in Italy, in Denmark, and in Spain. Thank you very much for asking me to host this incredibly interesting workshop today, which was hybrid, and I hope to see you all again in the future events that S&D Group will be organizing. Wish you all a very good night. Thank you.